This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
It's a little weird that we have very low tariffs and China has very high tariffs.
You have my commitment to work with you and others to make certain that the drug pricing is reasonable and that individuals across this land have access to the medications that they need.
From trade to healthcare, we are just days away from an historic power shift. And those who will implement the coming change were on Capitol Hill making their positions heard.
Borrowers cheated. The government sues the nation's largest servicer of student loans after years of complaints.
Last vacant post, there's no nominee for Agriculture Secretary. Is that sowing the seeds of discontent among the nation's farmers? All that and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Wednesday, January 18th.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Two issues that touch us all. Healthcare, because we all get sick at one time or another, and trade, because it shapes the economy, the job market, and our financial lives. And today, the two men nominated to lead the departments that could potentially usher in massive change to those industries were on Capitol Hill, answering questions and, at times, engaging in heated exchanges. Billionaire investor Wilbur Ross, now Donald Trump's choice to lead the Commerce Department, testified that job one will be to renegotiate NAFTA, the trade agreement often cited on the campaign trail as damaging the middle class. But it was a fiery 4-hour hearing with Tom Price, the controversial pick to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, that led to a lot of back and forth on everything from Medicare to drug prices to Mr. Price's personal trades in healthcare companies. Bertha Coombs starts us off.
Health Secretary nominee Tom Price's appearance before the Senate Health Committee was courtesy because the Finance Committee will actually vote on his nomination. But Democrats came out swinging, hammering the Georgia congressman on health issues where he's disagreed with President-elect Donald Trump, like Medicare.
Will you work with us so that Medicare negotiates prices with the pharmaceutical industry?
You have my commitment to work with you and others to make certain that the drug pricing is reasonable and that individuals across this land have access to the medications that they need.
Wasn't quite the answer to the question that I asked.
Can you guarantee to this committee that you will safeguard President-elect Trump's promise? And while you are HHS Secretary, you will not use your administrative authority to carry out a single dollar of cuts to Medicare or Medicaid eligibility or benefits.
What the question presumes is that money is the metric. In my belief,
yes, I am asking
from a scientific standpoint.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're very limited on time. The metric is money.
The most contentious questions surrounded Price's trades in healthcare companies.
Do you believe it is appropriate for a senior member of Congress actively involved in policymaking in the health sector to repeatedly personally invest in a drug company that could benefit from those actions? Yes or no?
Well, that's not what happened.
Price said he deferred decisions to his broker on investments.
Do you direct your broker around ethical guidelines? Do you tell him, for instance, not to invest in companies that are directly connected to your advocacy? Because it seems like a great deal as a broker. He can just sit back, take a look at the positions that you're taking.
She can sit back.
She can sit back, in this case, look at the legislative positions you're taking, and invest in companies that she thinks are going to increase in value based on your legislative activities, and you can claim separation from that because you didn't have a conversation.
Well, that's a nefarious arrangement that I'm really astounded by.
Elizabeth Warren wouldn't let it go.
So let's just be clear. This is not just a stockbroker, someone you pay to handle the paperwork. This is someone who buys stock at your direction. This is someone who buys and sells the stock you want them to buy and sell.
Not true.
So when you found out that your broker had made this trade without your knowledge, did you reprimand her?
What I did was comply.
Found out that she made it.
What I did was comply.
Did you fire her? Did you sell the stock?
What I did was comply with the rules of the House in an ethical and legal and above-board manner and in a transparent way.
Representative Price says he'll divest of all his stock holdings if confirmed as health secretary. He goes before the Senate Finance Committee next week. Bertha Coombs, Nightly Business Report.
And now to the confirmation hearing for Commerce Secretary, where tensions were not quite as high, but the issues just as important. During his testimony, Mr. Ross pointed the finger at China for unfair trade practices and said his top priority is to level the playing field. Eamon Javers reports.
Billionaire investor Wilbur Ross faced a largely welcoming Senate Commerce Committee today as Democrats and Republicans appeared to assume his confirmation as Secretary of Commerce is all but a foregone conclusion. Ross was quizzed on issues of trade, jobs, and climate change, and he laid out his overall expectation for the U.S. economy.
I think we can certainly get north of 3% growth if we do all the elements of the president's program.
He said one of the first priorities for the new administration will be dealing with what he called unfair trade barriers.
It's a little weird that we have very low tariffs and China has very high tariffs. That seems to me to be a bit of an imbalance. And it's one thing to talk about free trade. We would like to have our trading partners also practice free trade and do it in a more balanced manner.
Ross also gave his sense of the ways to pay for President-elect Donald Trump's massive proposed infrastructure initiative.
You support direct spending by government on infrastructure.
I think there will be some necessity for it.
And Democrats pressed Ross repeatedly on the sharp contrast between Ross's divestiture of billions of dollars of personal assets and Trump's declining to do the same. Ross ducked the question.
The ethics rules that apply to Senate-approved nominees do not apply to the president.
You were able to do it. Why not the president?
I'm not familiar enough, Senator, with the exactitudes of his holdings to have any judgment as to how easy or hard it would be.
At the outset, Ross explained that he had to fire a household employee within the past month when that person was unable to provide proof of documentation to work in the United States. But he described it as a rare incident, and the senators seemed satisfied with his explanation. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Eamon Javers in Washington.
Scott Pruitt, Donald Trump's pick to lead the Environmental Protection Agency, started a contentious confirmation hearing talking about climate change. He criticized the agency he's been nominated to lead and outlined the role he thinks regulators should play.
Regulators are supposed to make things regular, to fairly and equitably enforce the rules and not pick winners and losers. A regulator should not be for or against any sector of our economy. Instead, a regulator ought to follow the law in setting up the rules so that those who are regulated can plan, allocate resources to meet the standards versus operating in a state of uncertainty and duress.
Mr. Pruitt would not say whether he would recuse himself from ongoing lawsuits he filed against the EPA as Oklahoma's Attorney General.
On Wall Street, the Dow dropped for a fourth straight day as more companies reported earnings and investors analyzed comments from the chair of the Federal Reserve. More on those stories momentarily. But first, here's a look at the closing numbers for you. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 22 points to 19,804. The Nasdaq rose 16, and the S&P 500 was up 4.
The economy is close to running on its own. The chair of the Federal Reserve today said the economy has almost met the Fed's goals and that the central bank can start further reducing the extreme levels of monetary policy support that prevailed over most of the Obama years. Speaking to the Commonwealth Club, Janet Yellen said removal of that support would be slow.
As of last month, I and most of my colleagues, the other members of the Fed board in Washington, and the presidents of the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks, we're expecting to increase our federal funds rate target a few times a year until, by the end of 2019, it is close to our estimate of its longer-run neutral rate of 3%.
The Fed last hiked its benchmark interest rate in December.
Inflation pressure is heating up a bit. That's according to the Federal Reserve's Beige Book, which is an anecdotal look at the economy across the country. 8 of the 12 districts reported modest price increases. That's pretty much in line with the Consumer Price Index report out today, which showed a 0.3% increase in December, bringing growth over the past 12 months to more than 2%, the fastest pace in 5 years.
Output at the nation's factories, mines, and utilities rose in December at the strongest pace in 2 years. Industrial production was up nearly 1% last month, the biggest gain since November 2014. Utility output showed the biggest gain, surging more than 6.5% as winter rolled in following an unseasonably warm November.
The U.S. economy and the global economy dominated the conversation at the annual meeting of the world's richest and most powerful. But this year, the World Economic Forum is taking place amid a backdrop of worldwide change, and that hasn't escaped the attention of business and political leaders.
If you look at the economy, we have 15 million more people working, wages are going up, home formation is going up, companies are flush with cash, capital markets are wide open, sales are going up.
Energy situation is very, benign in the country. I say it was, fundamentally, things were kind of getting better anyway, and so this is pushing in the direction of the momentum.
We're going to be trying some new things. I mean, we as a country. Some will work, some won't work as well.
There's a lot that can go wrong, but I think we're at the beginning of a change in the cycle.
My concern right now is the markets are priced in everything this incoming administration wants to do as if it's already been done.
Fiscal expansion, coupled with monetary tightening, coupled with increased protectionism, coupled with a border adjustment tax, is a policy prescription for a stronger dollar.
The balance sheet of the average consumer is in pretty good shape. The balance sheet of the companies is in pretty good shape. Credit is very good. So, in my view, it could actually be strengthening.
The leaning forward, if you will, to experiment,
regulatory lessening,
to debottleneck,
tax reform,
to change taxes,
infrastructure spending.
There are going to be a lot of things, most of which, on a theoretical basis, most people would say are good things.
There is a lot of differences of opinion within his administration about how to do some of these things.
And I'm hoping, by the way, if you get a little bit of tax reform and regulatory reform, that you will actually have an accelerating economy.
Donald Trump is aggressive. Is he aggressive and wise and thoughtful and calculating, or is he aggressive and reckless? Right. And I think we're going to find out.
I am dying to look back at this and like the outcome of it, and I'm certainly going to behave in as supportive a fashion as I possibly can to make sure that I like it.
Still ahead, sowing the seeds, the challenges the nation's farmers face as they wait for the president-elect to make his pick for agriculture secretary. The government is suing the largest student loan servicer in the country. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau alleges that Navient illegally cheated borrowers out of certain rights they have in repaying their student debt. Navient is a former part of Sallie Mae and services more than $300 billion in federal and private student debt. It's accused of providing bad information and incorrectly processing payments over a period of years.
The Labor Department is suing a division of Oracle, claiming the company paid white male employees more than other workers and favored Asians when recruiting and hiring for technical jobs. The government warned that discrimination suit against Oracle America could cause the parent, Oracle, millions of dollars in federal contracts if the Labor Department can prove its case. The lawsuit was the result of a 2-year investigation into the company. Oracle disputes the allegations.
J.P. Morgan will reportedly pay $55 million to settle charges it discriminated against minority homeowners. The government alleges that between 2006 and 2009, J.P. Morgan charged African American and Hispanic borrowers higher rates than white borrowers. That violates the Fair Housing Act. The bank denies any wrongdoing.
Goldman Sachs saw its profits soar fourfold on a surge in bond trading. Goldman, along with other Wall Street banks, benefited from an increase in volume after the presidential election and from a rise in interest rates. Goldman Sachs topped both profit and revenue expectations, but shares of the Dow component closed lower on the day.
Citigroup also benefited from the increase in market volume after the election, and according to the company, that trend has carried into the new year. But Citi reported a mixed fourth quarter with profit up 7% and revenues just missing expectations. The bank's CFO says the environment remains strong and clients are optimistic about changes to the tax code and pro-growth policies. The stock was off more than 1.5%.
And shares of Netflix spiked following the streaming company's latest quarterly results, thanks to a surge in subscribers. Netflix earned 15 cents a share, 2 cents better than estimates. Revenue was also a slight beat, nearly $2.5 billion in the quarter. But as Julia Borston tells us, it is all about those subscribers.
The key takeaway of Netflix's better than expected earnings results, it's growing faster than expected, particularly overseas. Netflix adding more than 7 million new subscribers last quarter as it grew its overseas user base by nearly 1.5 million more subscribers than the company projected. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings attributed that better than expected growth to its original content, exclusives including The Crown, Marvel's Luke Cage, and its Gilmore Girls reboot. But the company's pace of subscriber growth will slow, it warns, as Netflix faces some tough comparisons in the next quarter. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Julia Borston in Los Angeles.
Target slashes its profit outlook for the year on weak holiday sales, and that is where we begin tonight's market focus. Despite seeing strong momentum in its e-commerce business, the retailer said disappointing foot traffic and heavy discounting led to a decline in same-store sales. Target also lowered its guidance for the current quarter, and shares fell more than 5%. They finished at 66.85. The British educational publishing company Pearson said profits would plunge this year because of ongoing weakness in North American sales, and the bad news didn't end there. Pearson said it would cut its dividend and sell its nearly 50% stake in the book publisher Penguin Random House. Shares off 28% to $7.13. And the drug maker Eli Lilly will take over Colucid Pharmaceuticals for nearly $1 billion. The deal will add Colucid's experimental migraine treatment to Lilly's emerging pain management pipeline. Colucid shares up 32% to $46.25. Eli Lilly up a fraction at $77.53.
General Motors will pay $1 million to the Securities and Exchange Commission to settle accounting charges related to a faulty ignition switch found in some of the automaker's vehicles. The SEC said the company's deficient internal accounting controls prevented it from properly determining the potential for a recall and estimating possible loss. Shares rose, though, 16 cents to $37.47. And American Airlines is the latest carrier to launch a basic economy fare that offers flyers a cheaper ticket price for less perks. With the new option, customers cannot reserve seats or upgrade and can only bring a personal item that fits under the seat. The service is expected to launch next month on select routes. Shares were up almost 2% to $47.64. Canadian Pacific Railway said its profit rose in its latest quarter, while revenue slipped. The railroad operator also said its CEO would step down immediately. That's earlier than the previously announced departure date, and that the company's current president would take on that position. Shares fell slightly in after-hours trading and also ended the regular session down a fraction to 145.22.
The president-elect still has not picked someone to lead the Department of Agriculture. It's the last cabinet position to be filled. And as the nation's farmers know, that nominee will have to address a number of challenges. Aditi Roy reports from San Francisco.
Scott Willoughby owns Seabass Vineyards in Mendocino County, California. As a farmer of specialty crops, he says finding workers to harvest his grapes is becoming harder.
There's fewer people coming in, more people leaving to go back home. And the workforce in the vineyard is actually aging. It's a problem that is not seeming to diminish, and all of us were struggling.
He worries that the incoming Trump administration will hold true to the president-elect's campaign talk about building a wall to keep undocumented workers out of the country. Experts say undocumented immigrants make up more than half of the workers on the country's farms.
Other vineyard owners and wineries have tried to hire non-immigrant workforce, which I think is sort of maybe implied in the political belief that perhaps immigrants are taking jobs from Americans. And unfortunately, there's been no success with that.
Pete Aiello is more hopeful about the incoming administration.
I'm excited because it's going to be a change.
As the owner of Usugi Farms, which covers 5,000 acres over 3 states, he hopes Trump will pull back on government regulation.
I'm just excited that we're not going to go through the same stuff that we just went through for the last 8 years. The climate here for businesses and farms, especially businesses that are farms, is very crippling.
Along with immigration, environmental regulations like the Waters of the U.S. rule, which protects waterways and wetways and is currently under review in the courts, are two pressing issues affecting farmers as the Trump administration prepares to take office. Farmers are important to Trump since rural voters helped elect him to office. Another hot-button topic is trade. Experts say NAFTA has benefited farmers by opening up export markets. Agricultural groups are also in favor of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which Trump has opposed.
Agriculture is very dependent upon agricultural trade, and so would very much hope that this administration will do what it can to avoid trade frictions as it goes through some of these renegotiation efforts that we're talking about.
Officials with the American Farm Bureau, a trade advocacy group whose members include hundreds of thousands of farmers and ranchers across the country, say Trump and his Secretary of Agriculture are taking the reins at a critical economic time for the nation's farmers.
Farm income is off about 50% from where it was just 3 or 4 years back. Expectations are that it's going to stay down here for a while. And so farmers are beginning to feel financial stress. The farm economy is certainly not doing as well as the general economy is.
Ag experts and farmers will also be closely watching the progress of the 2018 Farm Bill. Experts say the farm economy will factor prominently into the congressional discussions over the legislation, with low crop prices and farm income looming. Commodity programs and crop insurance subsidies, just two issues at stake in the bill. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Aditi Roy, San Francisco.
Coming up, 12 bedrooms, 21 bathrooms, 3 kitchens, and a fitness center. We'll take you on a rare tour inside the most expensive house for sale in the United States. Home builder sentiment slipped a bit in January, but after surging to an 11-year high following the election, confidence is still at elevated levels. The National Association for Home Builders said that builders are still upbeat that the new Congress and the incoming administration will create a better business climate for the industry.
Well, the most expensive home for sale in the United States is shrouded in secrecy. It has never been photographed. There are no images of it on the internet, but tonight we have an exclusive look inside. Robert Frank hosts an open house in L.A. like you've never seen before.
Well, the high-end real estate market is getting increasingly competitive, and this house in Bel Air, California has set a whole new level for high-end real estate. We're going to give you a tour starting here in the gaming and entertainment room. Now, it's a 12,000 square foot entertainment area, the ultimate billionaire man cave, you might say, with a 4-lane bowling alley with, yeah, what else? Gold and silver bowling pins, and then it's got a lounge over there. And you like eye candy? Well, talk about eye candy. It's a $250,000 candy wall, and then you've got foosball tables, a $12,000 pool table, and you know, the wealthy have garages and lots of cars. Well, the super rich, they have auto galleries and collectible cars worth millions. All of these cars and everything in this house comes with the house for your $250 million. Now, these cars include a $2 million supercar called Pagani. This car goes over 230 miles an hour. And this also comes with a house. It's one of the rarest cars in the world, a $15 million 1936 Mercedes. Now, we're in Los Angeles, the world of glitz and glam and the big show. Well, you talk about the big screen. This house has some of the biggest screens of any home. It's got your home theater with 7,000 movies and 40 super comfortable reclining leather seats. But if that's not big enough, we have the biggest TV in any home in America. It's nearly 30 feet long, with the bar and another big lounge area. So you can imagine all your Hollywood celebrity friends like Jack Nicholson and Brad Pitt, they're all gonna come over for drinks. Now this house overall is 38,000 square feet. It's got 4 levels. You can take one of 2 elevators that are lined in crocodile skin, or you can take the stairs. I'm going to take the stairs. Check this out. The stairs has this really cool feature. It's 20-foot wall designed to look like a safe. Now, if you're rich enough to buy this place, you got a lot of stuff you want to keep safe. Now, this is the second level. It's kind of another entertainment, more of a dining bar drinking area, because this is one of 2 wine champagne rooms, 2,500 bottles. With all that wine, you got to have places to drink it. This house has 6 bars and 130 individual pieces of art, including this one-of-a-kind giant replica of a Leica camera. How's that for a close-up? Now, the stairs in this house cost $2 million to build, designed out of a hand-polished stainless steel. And you ready for the showstopper? Check this out. 85-foot infinity pool overlooking Los Angeles, one of the best views in all of LA, with a jacuzzi and a 20-foot TV that rises up out of the landscape. And whoever buys this house for $250 million is going to be drinking a lot of champagne. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Robert Frank in Bel Air, California.
I don't know what to say.
You don't know what to say.
To read more about this 38,000 square foot mansion, log on to our website, nbr.com. I don't know enough people to fill one room of that house.
No, I don't either. I like country casual.
All right.
Not me. That's Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Sue Herrera. Thanks for joining us.
I'm Tyler Matheson. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
Can you even imagine? Of course you can.